joining us from ESPN. Louis Riddick, good to have you in the flesh as opposed to in a Zoom box for a change. Good to see you here.
The world's changed, right? Like, that's how we meet people now. That's how we get to know people is in computer screens and little boxes. I feel like I know everybody here. Like all this signage and stuff. This is so familiar to me.
I love it. Fantastic. And TJ, you were telling Louis you watched him play at Pitt?
Yeah, back at Pitt. I think it was, the 87 season, I guess, was your freshman year.
Yeah, it was.
Right? I had a friend who lived a block up from me. I'm from Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, man.
It was a big Pitt family, so his older brother graduated, went off to start his life, and his dad still had an extra ticket. So they start taking me to Pitt games, and I can specifically remember I still have my ticket stub from the Halloween game.
Yeah.
Your Syracuse squad and with Ironhead.
Yeah, man.
Hayward.
I was playing running back then. I was the fullback
for
Craig Ironhead Hayward.
Wait a second.
But like I said, like I told Rich off camera, look, when I was in the game, it was an automatic giveaway. We weren't running the rock. They were throwing it to me because I wasn't blocking nobody. I was like 210 pounds, 208 pounds. Iron was like 285. I mean, he led the nation in rushing, I think, that year, or was close to it. Unbelievable, man.
What's it like blocking for Ironhead Hayward?
Yeah, I know. Again, Rich, if they called anything that involved me blocking, I was like, well, I'll give it my best shot. But, they better not be pass protection, that's for sure.
Yeah. 8-4 that year.
I'm a ball carrier. That's what I am.
Wow.
Yeah,
good old days, though.
Iron had 1,800 yards that year.
He was unreal.
You had 175.
Yeah, but you know what? That Boston College game, I had a couple nice catches. Let's see, that year we played Notre Dame at Pittsburgh. The great Tim Brown came into town, 4th ranked. They thought we busted them right in the head too, and we knocked them off. We had a good year my freshman year, and then I moved back to DB. So,
all right, well, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
I love it.
There you go.
Louis Riddick of ESPN here on the Rich Eisen Show, live from Detroit. We're having a lot of fun. We got a whole third hour coming up. Roma Dunze is coming up to lead us off the next hour in a moment. And Louis, you're going to be part of ESPN's NFL Draft broadcast all 3 days of the NFL Draft, appearing on all their studio shows throughout the draft. It is good to see you here. So are you now, day before the draft, still of the mindset that Jaden Daniels is worthy of the first overall pick?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nothing's changed. Look, we've had these discussions over the years, Rich. I don't necessarily kind of like follow consensus for the sake of following consensus. I never have. Jaden is just someone that, as we've moved through this process, when you watch how repeatable his mechanics are, how consistent his feet are, how consistent his upper body is, how consistent he is with throwing the football and putting it where he needs to put it, change arm angles when he needs to, throw the football short, intermediate, deep, run when he needs to. People say, well, you know what? He's one of those guys. This is what's interesting about Jaden Daniels. This is kind of one of the things that's come up about him. Well, he doesn't throw outside of the pocket and throw out of structure enough. But last year, we used to say the same thing about C.J. Stroud too, right?
Yeah.
That he doesn't create enough, and that's why everybody loved Bryce Young, because he could create outside. And you talk to coaches in the NFL, they don't want quarterbacks to live in that environment anyway. They want it to be something you can do, not that you have to do. Jaden can do it. He just doesn't have to because he can win from the pocket. And so I think with him, he's got it. To me, he has got the perfect skill set for today's game. Coaches want you to win from the pocket, be able to threaten all 3 levels of the field, and take off and go 70-80 like Lamar if you needed to. We've seen him do all that. He accepted the challenge of transferring from the Pac-12 to the SEC when people were telling him not to. They didn't think he was ready for it, to go down there. You see the jump from year 1 to year 2 at LSU that this guy made? Yes, of course. Malik is a good wide receiver. Brian's a good wide receiver down there. They all elevated one another. Jaden had some fantastic, and I'll tell you what, this is kind of what topped it off for me. You cannot get a true evaluation on players unless you see them in person, up close, and you kind of stand next to them. That's kind of what did it for me when I went to see C.J. Stroud last year. When I was around Jaden and I saw him interacting with Malik and interacting with Brian Thomas and and how he was running his workout and watched the ball come off his hand, I'm going, that's the one. That's the guy. And that's not to say I didn't like Caleb, because I loved Caleb. All that crap that I had heard about him and people said, I was like, forget all that. I like this kid. And because you like one doesn't mean you hate the other, although in our world that's what it is, right?
Sure.
But I got this feeling that I got very similarly to C.J. Stroud when I saw him in person, was around him. I said, that would be the one that if I was picking first, that's what I'd take.
So do you think him going to Washington because that's where it seems like he's going to go. Unless do you think that's possible that he doesn't?
Yeah, I do. I think anything's possible. Look, I think it's likely that that's what winds up happening.
Yes.
But I think also, look, for Adam Peters in the ownership group in Washington to want to take one last look at all these guys together, on the same day, in the same kind of environment, like took them to play Topgolf and all that, spend some more time with them, like back to back to back. Like if you were comparing things, you'd love to have it fresh in your mind, a one-to-one comparison, like on the same day, like the same minute, right? You wouldn't want to like look at one thing and then 20 days later compare it to the next thing because you'll forget a lot of things. That to me signifies that it's not just a slam dunk that it's going to be Jayden. Otherwise, why would you do that this close to it?
I have no idea, man.
Why would you do that?
I mean, you're the evaluator.
I'll tell you this. I tell this story all the time. In 2004, when we drafted Sean Taylor in Washington.
Yes.
The night before the draft, he was not number one on our top 100 board.
Who was?
Kellen Winslow Jr. was. That was who it was going to be. We went into the room the night before the draft. Scouts, position coaches, ownership, Joe Gibbs, everybody. And we got after it. And it was darn near 50-50 down the middle who we wanted. And everyone had a chance to say, what they felt. And I went home that night thinking, man, we're going to draft Kellen. Because Joe was adamant. He thought he could just be special. Came back in the next morning, I remember walking in the draft room and looking up at the top 100 board, and there's Sean Taylor at the top.
What happened?
Somebody's argument was pretty compelling. I know I was adamant about it. Greg Williams was our defensive coordinator at the time.
Yeah.
Greg Blosh was our defensive line coach. Jerry Gray was there as one of our DB coaches. Steve Jackson. I mean, we got after it with the offensive staff. I mean, it was one of those very productive but heated debates. So it can happen at the last minute, in the last hour. You could wind up changing your mind. So I think anything's on the table with Washington, although it seems likely and makes sense that Jayden would be the one. For me, look, he'd be the number one pick. So we wouldn't even be having this discussion.
But what about, I mean, in all straight up, I love this. Louis Riddick here on the Rich Eisen Show. Ryan Poles, though, I mean, in Chicago, and I know he wasn't there. He wasn't there. He had nothing to do with Trubisky, and he had nothing to do with Justin Fields. Nothing to do with him. But for him to now potentially switch up and go Jaden Daniels and follow.
Which won't happen.
It won't.
Right.
Because
he's set on who he wants.
Okay.
And see, you know what? Like I had this discussion with someone. I said, well, I would like to, at this point, have my mind made up. Like I would, even though I understand what Adam's doing in Washington, I would like to have my mind made up. And they said, well, why don't you think about it this way? Why does Ryan have his mind made up already? Why isn't he taking this to the very? Why is he so dead set on Caleb being the first guy? And I said, well, you know what? I mean, look, if you're convicted, you're convicted. If you believe that that's your guy, then you believe that's your guy. And of course, a lot of Chicago Bears fans got upset with me for even suggesting that, going, you don't know what you're talking about. Caleb is generational. Caleb is Patrick Mahomes, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just like, oh, whatever, man. Look, whatever. But the point is, like, I remember Poles said this. He said he is dead sure on being able to evaluate the player, the skill set, the traits that he thinks are befitting of a guy who's the number one overall pick. It's getting the person right. And the person as it relates to fitting into your environment. That's always the real challenge. Obviously, he feels as though Caleb fits and checks every box for him as far as being that number one overall pick. And in Washington, they're making sure. And that's why, I'll tell you, after Caleb goes off the board, I'm going to be sitting there going, okay, folks, let's see what's happening here now.
So you think?
I think anything can happen.
Because everybody thinks 4 is kind of when things get started.
Well, why not 3? I mean, it's funny because Elliot Wolf says, hey, we might move up. We could move down. We might sit here.
I mean, move up.
I know. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. But I think that position, that spot is open for business too. I really do think the one thing I think we all know is this: just when you think you know, you don't know.
That sounds very Jim Morris Sr. right
there. There's no question. Exactly. And you never will know.
You almost went full Morris Sr. on me right there, Louis Riddick.
That's
you
right.
Almost did it. Where's the best spot for Penix? Where do you think, if you could personally place him somewhere,
I think stylistically, because of how Vegas has said they want to play, which is run, play action, not live in the pocket, but really execute from the pocket and push that ball down the field. That's Michael's thing, right? Mm-hmm. Quite honestly, it's Jayden's thing. That's why Antonio wants him.
Well, I mean, they go back to our. That's
right.
My phone blew up all weekend long from people saying Jayden's telling, or his people are trying to get him out of D.C. to go somehow wind up with Antonio Pierce.
Well, I guess if they pull a Mike Ditka move and just say, here, take all of our picks.
That's what it would require.
And we'll come up there. Yeah, exactly. Or it'd have to be something where, like, this is something weird where for some reason Jayden fell, which he's not gonna slide happen like that, no. Right? So, but I know this. Look, knowing Antonio like I do and talking to him like I have, he loves the kid.
Penix or Jayden?
Jayden.
Okay.
He believes that this young man will be, a top 5, top 3, top 2 passer. Probably 2-3 years into the league.
Well, I heard they're like family.
That guy.
I heard they're like family, and that's why they want to be together.
And you know what, Rich? What's interesting about that? Like we know that, right? We know that the real special ones in the league, regardless of position, usually have that kind of relationship with the staff, with the head coach, or with a play caller. Like, it takes something unique in order for you to really get unique level results, and Maybe that's the kind of thing that would really spur Jayden to really maximize his potential. I mean, why do we think C.J. Stroud right now? Do you think, as good as he is, I mean, I know we talked about him last year. That was my number one guy. Him in Houston with D'Amico is perfection, absolute perfection. Those relationships that's where you find the inches. That's where those are the separators. And Jayden in Vegas, oh man. It ain't happening,
right?
But you could book it.
But you think Penix in Vegas is?
I think that would be real nice.
13.
Absolutely. Look, I know that it's so wild to me that we find the things to not like that quarterbacks haven't shown that they can do to kind of hammer them with, even though we know this. The more you run, the more you move, the more you live outside of structure and outside the pocket in the NFL, exponentially your risk for getting injury goes up. But now we're dinging quarterbacks who try to live in the pocket. And the greatest quarterback of all time lived in the pocket. But now we're going, but this guy can't create outside. It's like, well, this guy's just too good in the pocket. That's all he does is stay in the pocket. It's just like, come on now.
Isn't that the Mahomes effect, though?
Of course it is. See, Patrick's changed the whole game. He's changed everybody's brain. Like, you think unless you can do what he does, you're not that good. Mm-hmm. You're just not that. It's like what happened with Brock Purdy last year. By the way, have you seen pictures of Brock Purdy this offseason?
Is he yoked?
Oh.
My
Is he?
God.
I don't know. Let's look.
He doesn't look like he's going in campus to home ec.
He's coming out. Anymore? I'm telling you what. I guarantee you in 2024, he's coming out firing.
Really?
This dude looks like a bodybuilder playing quarter. I mean, it's unbelievable. He's always been built like that anyway. But anyway, another discussion. But yeah, the Mahomes effect is real. Unless you look like that, which is another reason why people are so enamored with Caleb. But you know what's funny about that? Caleb at his pro day, he didn't throw one pass outside the pocket. He didn't do one rollout, didn't do one roll to the left, throw back to the right. And I was sitting there watching it going, I'll be damned, he's not throwing outside the pocket. And afterwards I asked him, I said, was that on purpose? He goes, absolutely. He goes, I'm tired of people thinking that all I am is the highlight player. I can live in structure. That's where he wants to learn to be better. But it's the area where everybody feels as though he has to stay in order to be productive, and he doesn't.
Well, it's great to have you here, man. Like I said when I texted you the other day, it's like good to have you in person as opposed to just in a little Zoom cube. And thrilled to have you here. And look forward to doing a draft. I don't know where our set is in relation to yours.
We can usually see you guys. We can see you over the way.
We do like a friendly wave every now and then.
Yeah, man.
And check out, again, Louis Riddick on the ESPN draft coverage. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.